farmer in the world. US, Japan, Israel, and France is doing. The only thing, when we started our project in Ethiopia, the seed companies were not there. They came with us. And now all these big five are building, are establishing offices, distributing channels, and they are supplying the demand. And Fair Planet is just bridging the seed gap. We are not breeding seeds, we are not producing seeds, and we're not distributing seeds. We actually do capacity building. But first we need to start with evaluating what is the best variety for each region.
I think in order, Red had a question in the back over here, and I'll come back.
Hello? I'll show my ignorance. You're talking about professional seeds. That means if somebody grows something and they save the seeds, they won't grow. Is that correct?
No, it's not correct. I'll explain to you. These are what we call hybrid seeds. We are in agricultural region and university. You can collect the seeds from the plant, and some farmers do it, and you can grow them again. The only thing, they will not be uniform. Like kids, okay? My kids, they don't look alike. Each one of them is different. So you can collect the tomato seeds or the pepper seeds or the onion seeds and grow them again, but it will not be professional production, because one plant will be big, one will be small, one early, one late, and it's not good for business. A farmer wants to know what he gets. He wants a uniform, and this, again, I'm telling you, they are like any farmer in the world. They want to make money out of their plots, and they want good quality produce. And when you, and what we tell them, please collect and compare for yourself, and they do it. And then they compare and they see they make money, better money out of the seeds that they buy.
Yes. Sorry, you had a question next.
Thanks. So I guess because I do policy, I can't help but think about these presentations a little bit in policy terms, in the role of government in what you're describing. We're sitting here in a pioneering land-grant college, which presents one model of government's role in agricultural R&D. And what you're describing is a kind of bottom-up, necessity is the mother of invention, or public-private partnership in a way, or really private non-profit partnership. And so I'm curious about what role, if any, the government plays in the work that each of you is doing or has done. When Kibbutz Keturah decided to build, a solar field, Israel's first solar field, and wanted to do that at a commercial level, is that, was that something that relied in any way on government support?
We got investors.
Yeah, I mean, I just find it a very curious contrast to the model that surrounds us here, and I'm curious for your thoughts on that.
I can say that about, I think 7 years ago, a very eminent Israeli economist named Eugene Kendall was the economic advisor to the Prime Minister, and he chaired a committee to look at agri-tech. And one of his conclusions was that the government has not done enough to provide the kind of financial resources that this nascent industry needs. And he suggested, I think, 100 million shekels to be put in there through Israel's Innovations Authority. And part of those recommendations have been applied. There's now a PhD scientist, very bright woman, running the agri-tech section of the Ministry of Agriculture. But to be honest, it's really, I would say, VC firms that have made this thing happen. Venture capital has come in, and the Israeli entrepreneurial spirit, people went out and found investors. I think the Israeli government could and should do more, especially because I think the Israeli government likes to say we're helping Africa through our agri-tech, but those companies don't make money in Africa. They make money in Europe, US, Australia. So if we could only get them to help Israeli agri-tech creativity be directed at some of the poor farmers in the world, I think we'd be doing much better by the plan.
Very good. So I think you had a question, we'll come back over here.
Two questions. The first one, you were referring almost at the end of the presentation about the startup boom. I wanted to know in Israeli economy what each part represents today in terms of GDP or whatever. What I mean is, you refer to less than 10,000 farmers. How much is in Israeli economies now like the agricultural segment, and how much is the technology related to agricultural production segment? And the other one,
Let's, since we're short on time, let's.
I'll just be brief, and I don't have the numbers in my hand, but I have it in my report. The truth of the matter is the Israeli agricultural sector still is a strong export sector, largely dates, but as years go by and as real local demand goes up because the population grows, fewer and fewer exports. We don't export tomatoes anymore. We used to be huge on exporting tomatoes. Today we mostly export dates because that's what the market holds. So I think over time the role of agriculture as an export industry is going to be diminished in Israel. We hardly export flowers today, okay? Grapes are almost all internally consumed. But the technology is going to far surpass that, as we already see it happening with the, in the tafim and the irrigation sectors. I mean, they have countries, factories in almost 30 countries. So I think that as time goes on, Israel will feed itself and less of an export cash market, and more of it will be in the technology sector.
Can do one more, and I think we had a question in the front.
Bill, it's good to see you again. I've been to Kibbutz 3 or 4 times. Good to see you on your side of the water.
That's not a plan, but you should all go see Kibbutz Keturah. It's pretty incredible. My question is more of a concern. I have an unusual obsession with the Dead Sea. I love the Dead Sea, and I am deeply concerned that there is, the evaporation is happening, and we're losing the Dead Sea I go every 2 years, and I can tell the difference. What is being done from the educational, academic, business, intellectual perspective, what's being done in the government, and what can little old me be doing here in the U.S. to support and call attention to a real problem?
That's on you, I think.
Every year the Dead Sea drops by a little more than a meter, but that's the height. But in fact, the retreat in terms of depth is even further. So what you're looking at is a real problem. The environmental movement has been very, very resistant to all kinds of ideas about piping and water, and I have taken a somewhat minority position that as the Dead Sea is disappearing largely because of Israel's agricultural success and the transport of the water, the socialism I talked about, the flip side is the empty Dead Sea. We have to take a few chances. Obviously, you want to do that as cautiously and with as much prudence as possible, but the proposed conduit from the Red Sea to the Dead Sea to me seems like the best deal available. Jordan especially is key. No, from the Dead Sea to the Red Sea, because the problem with the Mediterranean is it has to go up the hill to Jerusalem and down, so the energy equation is tough. If you take the Red Sea, which is at sea level, and go to the lowest point in the Earth, 400 meters below sea level, you can use gravity, and it's a much, much lower proposition in terms of energy. So that's the idea. There is a proposal on hand to this, I think I mentioned this morning, there's a water swap notion, but there's going to be presumably a desal plant in Aqaba. The brine, about 30% of desal is salty, will be sent to the Dead Sea as a pilot, okay, to see how that's going to work. And assuming it works, over time the idea is to create a desalination facility at the Dead Sea, which will provide Jordan for water. Remember, Jordan has probably the most acute water crisis on the planet today. And so there are a lot of plans, and the problem is who's going to pay for it. So that goes to what you can do. No, you personally, but it's clear that the expectation of Jordan is that they are going to enjoy the support of the international community and sort of try to pose it as some sort of a peace project and something like that.
NGO or specific nonprofit out there? I'll pay a right check.
No, I think the notion is that the World Bank, that donors will come in and say, we're going to help Jordan because it's a stable democracy, it's on the moderate side of the region, and I think they're counting on, and thus far their expectations have